right, well, first of all, if I know that you're going to talk about boobs and said shit and talk about where babies come from, this whole story would have taken a different direction. Guaranteed. All right. Pets. People love their pets, and especially their dogs. Do we have any people out there that are dog people? Yeah, me not so much. It's not that I don't like dogs. It's just that, you know, I never grew up in a household with dogs. My mom hated animals. She thought that pets, and especially dogs, they were really unsanitary and they didn't belong in the house, so we never had one. Well, as a young father, I had 3 young children, and they were all constantly begging me to have a dog, and I was always able to, you know, stand off on their pleas. Well, something happened that made me think that maybe I wanted a dog. Does anybody out there remember that show, Frasier? Yes. All right, Frasier. There was a father, his name was Martin, and he was the father of 3 adult children, or 3 adult men, I should say. And he had a dog named Eddie. Eddie was a Jack Russell Terrier, and that was the cutest, smartest dog that ever lived. I'm telling you that everything that Martin commanded that dog to do, he would do on an instant. And he always seemed to know what made Martin happy, and he was always there to fulfill his every wish. And I knew at that moment I needed a Jack Russell Terrier. I let my family know my desire, and they all too gladly presented me with a Jack Russell on my birthday. I trained that dog. I loved that dog, and he was going to be just like Eddie. I named him General MacArthur. Mac for short. Well, things were going great for the first 4 months. That dog, he was potty trained. He could roll over. He could come. He could stay. Anything I told that dog, it knew how to do. Things were perfect. Well, on Father's Day, we were down in my parents' basement, and of course Mac was there because I never went anywhere without Mac. I was one of those obnoxious people that had Mac in my lap as we were driving down the road, and he was helping me drive the car. And I even taught little baby talk to my little precious baby. Yeah, I was that guy. Well, after dinner, my 5-year-old daughter Jessica comes down and wanted to take Mac upstairs to play with her and her cousins. I was a little hesitant, but I gave her one big instruction. And that instruction was, make sure the doors are closed and that dog doesn't get outside. It was only a few moments after Jessica and her cousins had gone upstairs that I heard a blood-curdling scream. I ran outside, and there lay Mac, flattened on the road. He had got off, he got out of the door, and had been run over by a car. It was a gruesome sight. Blood coming out of both ends. And out of nowhere, Here comes my mother, who hated all animals and thought that dogs especially were unsanitary. She grabs up Mac in her arms and commands, "Let's go!" The three of us and my traumatized daughter get into my car and we sped off. I looked at my mother and I said, "Where are we going?" "To the doggy hospital!" Like I should have known. Well, where is the doggy hospital? Like, I didn't even know my mom knew there were hospitals for dogs, much less where one was. "It's next to the city dump! Speed on! Hit it!" Off we go. We get to the animal hospital. My mom scoops up Mac in her arms, runs in through the front doors just like an emergency room nurse. "Where's the doctor? Where's that doctor?" One of the assistants grabs Mac, takes him to the back room, and the wait begins. Well, after about an hour, the vet comes out and he says, "Doesn't look good for your little friend. We're going to have to stabilize him through the night." Well, being an accountant and knowing the odds weren't great, I asked, "How much is this going to cost?" $1,500. My first reaction was, let's go say goodbye to the little guy. But then I saw my face of my guilt-ridden daughter, and I told him, whatever it takes. Well, then the good doctor shares with me, well, if he does make it, we're going to have to do a hip operation to make sure that he can never walk again. How much is that going to cost? That's $1,500. Well, I got to tell you, 30 years ago, $3,000 was a lot of money to a young father with 3 little kids. But I figured I would take it out of her college fund, and she would have to go to community college. Well, good news, Mac did make it. He survived. And after months of convalescing, old Mac was able to run with just a slight limp. And I'll tell you, if you didn't know what had happened, you never know that he had ever been injured. But something had changed. There was something very mysterious about Mac. He came up with this fascination for rocks. I'm going to tell you, he would sneak rocks into the house and drag them across our hardwood floors. If we were outside, he would bring a rock, he'd drop it on your foot. He would bark and cry until you would play fetch with him. He loved that game. If that dog was awake, he was thinking about rocks. One day, we were out in our backyard, and I tell you, we had 2 acres of woods in our backyards, and this was up in Maryland, all of our neighbors had 2 acres of woods. And behind that, there was a state forest that went on forever. Well, one day, Mac was just out there just yapping, wanting to play fetch with rocks. And I'll tell you, out of frustration, I took a rock and I threw it into the woods. About 15 minutes later, here comes Mac. Drops a rock on my foot. I pick it up, and it looks like the same rock. So this time, I take a Sharpie pen, I mark the rock, I throw it with my best Cal Ripken way into the woods. Mac doesn't hesitate, goes right into the woods. About half an hour later, he comes back, rock, with a Sharpie mark on it. It was the same rock. This only intensified this dog's fixation with rocks. It was incredible. Every single day, the dog would bring rocks inside and stack them inside the house in all different locations. At night, he would howl, wanting to go outside to play with rocks. The dog was insane. Absolutely crazy. Well, one day, I'm about to leave work, and have you ever had that decision to make, like, I gotta go to the bathroom. Should I go now, or do I wait until I get to where I'm going? Well, I decided I'm gonna wait till I get home. I drive home, and I pull into the driveway, and I barely make it to the foyer bathroom. I prop open the toilet lid, and to my horror, the dog had filled up the toilet with rocks. It was too late for any alternative. I had to go. So I spent the next half an hour or so cleaning out the soiled rocks from the toilet before I could flush it. And at that moment, I was done. The dog and I could no longer coexist. I know a lot of you are thinking, how could you get rid of a dog? I'm telling you, I had not slept for weeks. The dog howled every night. My beautiful hardwood floors were scarred with rock marks. Every family function centered around throwing rocks into the woods to keep this stupid dog from ruining whatever enjoyment we were going to have. The dog had to go. So the next day, I put an ad into the Washington Post. Free to good, loving family. One Jack Russell Terrier. That afternoon, I get a phone call from this woman who claims Mac, and later on that evening, her and her 5 children and husband all came in tow in a minivan, and I explained to her the problems with Mac. She assured me she knew everything there was to know about Jack Russell Terriers. He would be in a safe, loving family, nothing to worry about. So we bid Mac goodbye. About 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in my lounge chair, enjoying the peace and quiet. The phone rings. Hello? Mr. Cummings, I must bring your dog back. I was standing at the top of the stairs with a basket of laundry, and the dog dropped a rock on my foot. I tripped down the stairs, and I broke my leg. The dog cries all night long. It only wants to play with rocks. I can't take it anymore. I said, I'm emotionally detached. I cannot possibly take this dog back. It would traumatize my family, and besides, think what it would do to poor old Mac. She's crying. She says, what should I do? To me, The answer was obvious. It was obvious. Put an ad in the Washington Post. Free to good loving family, one Jack Russell Terrier.